Two Ford engines, same mileage, same basic maintenance. One of them just rolled past 300,000 miles without skipping a beat. The other one? It ate through its owner's savings before 100,000. The difference wasn't luck. It wasn't even maintenance. It was the engine itself. Ford has built some of the most legendary engines in automotive history. Engines that run forever. Engines that pull anything. Engines that defined generations. But Ford has also built some of the most expensive, frustrating, wallet-draining engines ever to come off an assembly line. Today, we're naming them all. The best, the worst, and exactly what separates the two. Stay until the end, because the engine most people overlook might be the one most worth having. Section 1. The worst Ford engines. Let's start with the painful side, because knowing what to avoid is just as valuable as knowing what to buy. These are the Ford engines with serious, documented, recurring problems. The ones that show up in shops early, cost owners dearly, and test patience in ways no engine should. Worst engine number 1. 2.7-liter EcoBoost V6. The 2.7-liter EcoBoost promised a lot: twin turbos, strong torque, modern efficiency. On paper, an impressive small displacement engine. In practice, it earned a rough reputation for problems that show up before the odometer gets comfortable. The first issue is the oil pan. Ford used a plastic oil pan mated to an aluminum block on early versions. The problem: plastic and aluminum expand at different rates under heat. That seal fails, oil leaks out. Some owners reported losing a quart every 3,000 miles. Then there's the turbo problem. The oil supply tube, especially on the driver's side turbo, can allow oil to leak or burn on cold starts. That causes excess smoke and damages turbo bearings over time. And worn valve guides compound everything. Oil gets into the combustion chamber. Some owners found themselves topping off every 1,000 miles. The post-2018 versions received meaningful improvements: better oil pan design, improved fuel injection, upgraded hardware. But early examples of this engine demand close scrutiny. If you're buying a used truck with this engine, service history is everything. Worst engine number 2. 3.8-liter Essex V6. The 3.8-liter Essex V6. It powered the Taurus, Sable, Thunderbird, and Windstar from the 1980s through the early 2000s. On paper, decent torque for its era. Ford even added split-port induction to improve output. In reality, it became one of Ford's most problematic engines of its generation. The core issue is head gasket failure. Cast iron block, aluminum heads, two materials, two different expansion rates under heat. At around 100,000 miles, that mismatch catches up with you. The head gaskets start failing, coolant leaks, temperatures climb. Add a leaky intake manifold gasket or a marginal cooling system, which this engine was notorious for, and overheating becomes a recurring battle. Compared to modern V6s, the Essex is heavier, thirstier, and lower on output. Even with perfect maintenance, you're fighting the engine's fundamental design. If you find one, budget for head gaskets. They're not a question of if, they're a question of when. Worst engine number 3. 5.4-liter Triton V8. The 5.4-liter Triton V8. Powerful, good torque, found in millions of F-150s and Expeditions, and carrying some of the most notorious problems in Ford's modern engine history. There are two separate spark plug disasters depending on which generation you have. The early two-valve Tritons from roughly 1997 to 2003 used only 4 threads of aluminum to hold each spark plug in place. Heat, pressure, vibration. Over time, the plug blows out of the head, literally. The later 3-valve models from 2004 to 2010 had the opposite problem. Ford switched to a 2-piece spark plug design. When removal time came, the plug broke off inside the head. Extracting it became a full repair job. Beyond spark plugs, the Triton doesn't tolerate neglect. Timing chain guides wear, tensioners fail, cam phasers degrade. The result is a rattling startup, misfires, and in severe cases, valves meeting pistons. That is an engine rebuild situation. Sludge from skipped oil changes clogs small oil passages, drops pressure where it's needed most, and accelerates every timing system failure. Later Tritons received design updates, improved spark plugs, cam phaser upgrades, better tensioners. Early examples, especially the 2-valve generation, are the most problematic. Approach any 5.4-liter Triton with caution. Inspect thoroughly. Know what you're getting into. Worst engine number 4, 6-liter Power Stroke diesel. The 6-liter Power Stroke. Big power, popular in Super Duty trucks and economic vans, and carrying some of the most notorious repair stories than almost any engine on this list. Head gasket failure is the headliner. The stock head bolts don't clamp tight enough under certain thermal conditions. The EGR cooler, prone to soot and cooling contamination, fails and lets coolant leak or boil. Temperatures spike, heads warp, gaskets blow. The oil cooler clogs, overheating accelerates, the turbocharger suffers, injector control suffers. Everything connected to thermal management starts failing together. And the repair process? To properly fix a head gasket on a 6.0 Power Stroke, you remove a significant portion of the truck. In some cases, the cab comes off. Labor alone can be staggering. The 6.0 has a dedicated community of owners who have figured out how to bulletproof it. Upgraded head studs, EGR delete, oil cooler flush, but that requires investment before the problems arrive. Buying a used 6.0 Power Stroke means knowing exactly what work has been done to it, or budgeting to do it yourself. Worst engine number 5, 1.0-liter EcoBoost 3-cylinder. The 1.0-liter EcoBoost 3-cylinder. Small, efficient, clever engineering on paper, but with a design flaw at its core that makes long-term ownership a gamble. Instead of a timing chain, Ford used a wet timing belt. Compact, quiet, but exposed to engine oil. When fuel contaminates that oil, which it can over time, the belt degrades faster than it should. When the belt breaks, debris enters the oil pump. The result? Catastrophic engine failure. No warning, no gradual deterioration, just sudden, total failure. Coolant leaks are also common. Water pump seals, cracked hoses, faulty gaskets. Overheating stresses the head gasket. Internal coolant loss is hard to detect until serious damage is already done. When coolant mixes with oil in this engine, head gasket failure follows. Cracked heads, combustion contamination, in some documented cases, engine fires when hot components met leaked fluids. For a small, efficient daily driver, the risk profile of this engine is disproportionate to its size. Section 2. The best Ford engines. Now the other side. The engines that earn their reputation the hard way, through real miles, real work, real owners who ran them hard and kept coming back. Best engine number 1, 3.5-liter EcoBoost V6, Gen 2 Plus. The later generations of the 3.5-liter EcoBoost are, for many owners and mechanics, the gold standard of modern Ford performance engines. V8 levels of torque in a twin-turbo V6, strong towing performance, good fuel economy, impressive power delivery. The first-generation models, roughly 2011 to 2016, had documented issues with timing chain stretch and water pump failures. Those are real concerns on early examples, but from 2017 onward, Ford addressed the weak points, improved timing chain design, better cooling components, updated fuel injection with port injection added alongside direct injection, significantly reducing intake valve carbon buildup. Well-maintained post-2017 3.5-liter EcoBoosts regularly hit 300,000 miles with nothing beyond routine maintenance. The key phrase there, well-maintained, timely oil changes, healthy spark plugs and ignition components, monitored cooling system. Do those things consistently, and this engine will outlast expectations. For buyers who want maximum towing performance with modern efficiency, the Gen 2 Plus 3.5-liter EcoBoost is the benchmark. Best engine number 2, 5-liter Coyote V8. If you want classic V8 character without constant drama, the 5-liter Coyote V8 is one of Ford's greatest modern achievements. Naturally aspirated, no turbos, no intercoolers, a forged crankshaft, strong connecting rods, solid block design, twin independent variable cam timing, TIVCT, for efficiency without sacrificing power. The result? An engine that sounds incredible, revs clean, and with proper maintenance, routinely crosses 300,000 miles. Fewer sensors than turbocharged alternatives, parts that are accessible, failure modes that are predictable and manageable. Early Gen 1 and Gen 2 Coyotes had some gasket and oil leak tendencies worth watching, but the overall track record of this engine across hundreds of thousands of F-150s and Mustangs is exceptional. For buyers prioritizing long-term ownership, reliability, and the sound of a proper V8, the Coyote is the answer. Best engine number 3, 390 FE V8. For anyone who appreciates Ford's history, the 390 FE V8 is a legend. Produced from 1961 to 1976, a 6.4-liter cast-iron big block with a wide bore and a stout stroke. Serious low-end torque, delivered in a simple, forgiving package. The 390 FE is honest about what it is, a big, durable, hard-working engine that rewards basic care. Regular oil changes, healthy cooling, avoid overheating. Do those things and it pulls, lasts, and works without complaints. Many 390 FEs have crossed 200,000 miles in vintage trucks with nothing more than routine tune-ups, and its performance range is wide. Mild-mannered street engines to high-compression, high-output muscle builds. Versatile in a way modern engines rarely are. For vintage Ford enthusiasts, the 390 FE is one of the most rewarding big blocks ever built. Best engine number 4, 5-liter EFI High Output V8. The 5-liter EFI High Output V8. It arrived at a time when emissions regulations and fuel economy mandates were strangling performance out of American engines, and it helped bring muscle back. When Ford added electronic fuel injection in the mid-1980s, the 5.0 became smoother, more reliable, and easier to maintain than the carbureted alternatives of its era. Cast iron block, plenty of aftermarket support, forgiving tolerances, not turbocharged, not overly complex electronically. Failures are understandable and fixable, often by the owner. With basic maintenance, oil changes, cooling, ignition system upkeep, these engines regularly deliver 200 to 300,000 miles of service. Parts are still widely available. The community around this engine is enormous. For anyone who wants a classic, simple, genuinely durable Ford V8, the EFI 5.0 High Output remains one of the best.
Best engine number 5, 300 cubic inch Inline-6.
The Ford 300 cubic inch Inline-6. It ran from 1965 all the way into the 1990s in F-Series trucks and Broncos, and in that time it built a reputation for toughness that very few engines in history have matched. Cast iron block and head, 7 main bearings, timing gears, not belts, not chains, gears. That last point matters more than people realize. Gears don't stretch, gears don't snap, gears don't degrade the way belts and chains do. Massive low-end torque arriving around 2,000 RPM or below, perfect for pulling heavy loads without pushing the engine hard. Simpler than nearly any engine of its era, fewer failure points, easier to maintain. Stories of 300 Inline-6s crossing 300,000 miles on basic maintenance, oil changes, cooling flushes, leak checks are not rare, they are expected. If there is one Ford engine that defines the concept of just keeps going, it is the 300 cubic inch Inline-6.
Best engine number 6, Barra Inline-6.
The Barra Inline-6, built for Australian market Ford Falcons and Territory SUVs, it's an engine that surprises everyone who encounters it for the first time. A DOHC 24-valve Inline-6 with variable cam timing. The naturally aspirated versions are smooth and durable, but the turbocharged versions, that's where the story gets extraordinary. Factory turbo Barras produced around 333 to 346 horsepower depending on specification. With purpose-built upgrades, forged pistons, stronger rods, larger turbos, better injectors, these engines have produced over 1,000 horsepower on the same basic block, and they keep running. That combination of factory durability and extreme tuning potential makes the Barra one of the most remarkable inline-6 engines Ford has ever produced. For enthusiasts who want a modern inline-6 with genuine performance ceiling, the Barra is in its class of its own.
Best engine number 7, 7.3-liter Power Stroke Diesel. The 7.3-liter Power Stroke Diesel. Legendary is not an overstatement. Cast iron block and head, forged steel connecting rods, hydraulically actuated electronic unit injectors, a fuel system with a strong track record of longevity under demanding conditions. Properly maintained, fresh oil, clean filters, healthy cooling, the 7.3 Power Stroke routinely reaches 500,000 miles before needing major internal work. Not 200,000, not 300,000, 500,000 miles. It doesn't demand exotic maintenance. It doesn't require constant dealer visits. It asks for basic discipline in return for extraordinary durability. For owners who tow heavy, haul hard, and need a diesel that gives more than it takes, the 7.3-liter Power Stroke is one of the greatest diesel truck engines ever built. Best engine number 8, 6.7-liter Power Stroke diesel. Ford's modern diesel flagship, the 6.7-liter Power Stroke. Compacted graphite iron block, reverse flow aluminum heads, dual water jackets for thermal management. The engineering here is purpose-built for long-term heavy use. Well-maintained examples regularly push past 400,000 miles. Some heavily used but properly serviced trucks show even more. The post-2015 versions are significantly more refined than the early builds. Fewer early life issues, better turbo reliability, improved emission system durability. If you're buying used, check the build date and verify the service history on the turbo, boost system, and emissions components. For anyone who needs serious diesel towing capability with modern engineering behind it, the post-2015 6.7-liter Power Stroke is Ford's best diesel option right now. Best engine number 9, 5.2-liter Predator Supercharged V8. The 5.2-liter Predator Supercharged V8, around 700 horsepower in stock form, found under the hood of the Shelby GT500 and the F-150 Raptor R. Aluminum block and heads, dual overhead cams, a large positive displacement supercharger sitting on top. The performance numbers are extraordinary. The power delivery is strong across the entire rev range, not just at peak. Independent dyno testing confirms the real-world output backs up what Ford claims. But this engine requires discipline. High-quality, full synthetic oil is non-negotiable. Timing chain and tensioner health needs monitoring. Hard abuse early in the engine's life shortens it. Long-term reliability data at high mileage is still accumulating. This is a newer engine by Ford standards. For performance buyers who want Ford's most powerful production engine and are committed to the maintenance it demands, the 5.2-liter Predator is extraordinary. Best engine number 10, 7.3-liter Godzilla V8. The 7.3-liter Godzilla V8, Ford's biggest modern gasoline V8, and a deliberate return to simplicity. Push rod design, fewer moving parts than overhead cam alternatives, cast iron block, 6-bolt main bearing caps, forged crankshaft, a cooling system designed for sustained heavy use. The push rod architecture means lower complexity, easier service access, and fewer sensors and components that can fail under load. Early real-world data from heavy towing and commercial use is promising. Owners who use this engine hard report it handles sustained load exceptionally well. It hasn't yet accumulated decades of high mileage data the way older Ford engines have. But the engineering foundation, cast iron, forged rotating assembly, simple valve train, is exactly what long-lived engines are built on. For buyers who need a gasoline V8 that can handle serious work without the complexity of modern overhead cam designs, the Godzilla is built for you. Here's what every engine on this list, best and worst, has in common. They all started as engineering decisions made by teams of people trying to solve problems. Some of those decisions held up under real-world conditions. Some didn't. The engines that last aren't always the most powerful. They're not always the most modern. They're the ones where the fundamentals were done right, and where the owner treated maintenance as an investment, not an inconvenience. Every engine on the worst list has owners who ran them past 200,000 miles. Every engine on the best list has owners who destroyed them early through neglect. The engine matters, but how you treat it matters just as much. If you're stuck with one of the engines on the worst list, maintain it as rigorously as possible. Know its failure points, stay ahead of them, and if the repair costs become unsustainable, consider the upgrade. If you're choosing an engine for your next Ford, now you know which ones were built to go the distance. Ford has built some of the most durable, capable, and legendary engines in automotive history. It has also built some of the most expensive lessons. Now you know the difference. Choose wisely, maintain religiously, and your Ford will give you everything it was built to deliver. If this guide helped you make a smarter decision about your next engine, subscribe, because every week we break down what actually matters for real drivers.